and we have a special episode today. We have Coach Scott Spinelli, who over his 30-year career, coached in the NCAA. Coach, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for having me. Exciting time to be an Iowa State fan.
It sure is, man. Sweet 16 in Chicago. Can't wait to till Friday's game.
Yeah, I can't, I think they're going to be some great games here coming up.
Definitely, and we will get to that. I wanted to just talk about a little bit more about you and more of your career. The first thing I want to talk about is like the art of building a roster. Like, so usually, like in your career, like when you know the type of play style that you want to play, do you already have in mind like a roster, like on your coaching staff, like knowing where you want to recruit and the type of player that you want?
Well, I think first of all, you have to recruit in numbers, right? So
Mhm.
over the years, for me, Tyler, what I've tried to do, and I think some of the staffs that I've worked with or for, we put together a primary recruiting list, right? And
Right.
that primary recruiting list usually reflects, at least five guys in each position. And nowadays, with the transfer portal, you really have so many different players to choose from, whether that's coming from a Division 1 program
Mhm.
transfer in Division 2, Division 3. Obviously, you could continue on the JUCO ranks, the prep school, high school ranks. But I think all in all, it's about recruiting in numbers. And then the other thing is too, the guys with experience. Look,
Yeah.
I've seen TJ. Years we played against one another. When I was at Nebraska, he was at Iowa State as an assistant back then, if I remember
Yeah.
right, from Coach McDermott. I mean, look, one of the things that you have an advantage on now is you have such a big network. You've been
Mhm.
able to make your mistakes. A lot of times in this coaching thing, recruiting, you're going to make mistakes. The
Yeah.
difference is if you make too many, you're not going to be in the business too
Right.
long. And so I think you learn from that. And because of the fact that your network is so big, you have much more of an opportunity with this transfer portal to get the intel necessary on the evaluation. So I think being older and experienced right now is probably
Mhm.
more advantageous. Look, when I was a younger coach, we used to go out on the road for 30 days at a time and
Right.
you'd outwork people and you'd be on the road trying to bring 3, 4 coaches into a specific game to show somebody how important they were to your program. It's different now, and a
Yeah.
lot of it's done through the film, through your intel, your evaluation ability. But again, I think for most coaches, recruiting to the style of play, number
Yeah.
one, what type of players are you looking for? I think there's obviously a lot of different characteristics that go underneath that. For me, I think evaluating a player based on what I believe that player can do in the system that I'm coaching at, whether I'm the
Right.
head coach or the assistant coach. What is the system that we're playing? And not necessarily, Tyler, basing that on just on statistics. So sometimes you go out and you say,
Mhm.
okay, this guy gets 25 a game and this other player on the same team might get 8 a game. The difference is the 25-point scorer, he's being used by that coach in his system
Right.
differently, maybe, than the 8-point a game scorer. So you have to really kind of see past just the analytical numbers in terms of points per game,
Yeah.
and try to evaluate that player based on efficiency, the vision of how that player can fit what you're looking for the role you're trying to get him fit to fill within your system.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I always wondered that because I was wondering about with like TJ's first teams before he really could implement his system, he had to go through like 2 years of the type of players that he was doing. He like at least the first team of the TJ era that went to the Sweet 16, like they weren't really talented offensively, but defensively they were dogs, and that type of swarming defense it's just something that like a lot of teams like that like overwhelmed a lot of teams, and obviously he got to the style that he wanted to, which is to where they're at now, to where I think they really do have a shot at the Final Four. So yeah, definitely what you said is like you know the first few years finding the players that fit your system is definitely something that will come into fruition, at least in your vision. It might not come like 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line.
Well, I want to also add this to you, Tyler, because Iowa State fans don't probably remember this, but years ago when I was at Nebraska, and then I
Mm-hmm.
went over to Texas A&M, we had a player who's from where I'm from here in
Yeah.
Massachusetts, a kid by the name of Georges Niang, and this
Yeah.
you can quote me on this, okay? That was our number one recruit at Texas A&M at the time. We ended up, Mark Coach Turgeon got the job
Yeah.
at Maryland late in the spring, and
Yeah.
so when we left, George's committed to Iowa State, and we were really high on George's, and so just the relationship with him, his mom, knowing him
Mm-hmm.
from the Massachusetts area, that was a great evaluation by I think it was Coach Hoiberg. I think
Yeah.
EJ was there at the time, but he really, really made a huge difference in establishing Iowa State basketball at that
Mm-hmm.
point. But TJ is a phenomenal recruiter. I've recruited against him for many years. He's an unbelievably hard worker, and really happy to see the success that he's having with Iowa State. Because Tyler, there's a lot of guys who have come up the ranks,
Mm-hmm.
through sacrifice, moving around. You have to go through some struggles, and I think TJ, just like a lot of us have gone through, but he's been able to kind of take it to another level now as a head coach. So you can't help but applaud his success and the work that he's put in.
Definitely. Thank you for that. And so the second thing I wanted to talk about is like obviously like you have different players. Like we talked about putting a roster together, and like I think like for you, like did you have like the same motivation tactics for your entire roster, or did you have to motivate players different ways when you were coaching?
Well, I think, motivation, you don't really want to have to coach effort, right? You really
Right.
want the guys to be, self motivated, have a passion for the game. One of the things that kind of it correlates with that recruiting question that you asked as it relates to motivation is another quality that you kind of look for is a player that really loves the game.
Mm-hmm.
You say that today, Tyler. I'm sure you played the game. You've been around it for a while, and you must love and have passion for it to do, what you're doing now. And so I think you would probably take for granted that most players love basketball,
Right.
and you'd be surprised that a lot of the kids that you recruit, aren't gym rats like we were.
Right.
When we were younger and we were out in the Boston area here, if it was cold and snowy, we would go shovel and go play with those orange basketballs, bring
Right.
them in, put them under the sink so they get hot water so they bounce again, and
Yeah.
we'd play there. And now a lot of times, if it's cold in the gym, some of the kids don't want to practice, So I think you've got to really be mindful of that in the recruiting process as well, is to get players who are very passionate, who love the game, who have goals of trying to play, this college game, and then maybe to advance their career. Look, there's nothing wrong with having goals to play at that next level, and I think that should be every player's passion. I don't care what level you're at. You shoot for the stars, and whatever happens, at least you're striving towards something with excellence, right? So I
Right.
think that's something that you kind of look for as well. But again, for me personally as a coach, I'm a very positive guy,
Yeah.
and I think again with kids today, you've got to hold them accountable. I was at
Oh
some
yeah.
places even recently. Holding players accountable is critical to being successful in building a program. And again, I think a lot of that sometimes has to do with, look, you want to be upbeat, you want to hug them, you want to be
Hmm.
positive. If you don't really enjoy the kids and teaching and watching these kids develop as young men, not just on the court, as off the court, I don't care how much you love coaching, you're probably not in the right profession. You've
Right.
got to look at this as an educator, right? We're educators. We're trying to educate, obviously basketball, but life experience. And again, if you don't go to class, if you're showing up late all the time, if you're not a great teammate, those are things that need to be addressed with the guys. And so,
Right.
again, for me personally, I love the kids. I love being around them, and I'm a very positive type guy. But again, you still want to show that tough love and hold
Yeah.
the guys accountable.
Okay. No, yeah, and I think that's just like really, and like not, and just with basketball, I think that goes with business as well, or whatever you are in the workplace. Obviously, your manager's gonna hold you accountable, and it's really like how you respond and like how you like carry yourself. Like, are you making it to work on time every day? Are you giving it your all? Are you doing what you need to do to be successful? So, like, I think that you can that's
That's
a
great.
that can
Well
be.
said, Tyler. Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah, and so I totally like that, and moving on from that, for you, and I guess for other coaches like a TJ, or like for you, Scott, like do you do you like coach the same in March than you do in the regular season?
Well, I think as a coach, your job, at least during the course of the season, is to really try to get your team to get better. And I think
Yeah,
the emphasis, I think if you're trying to win and get better each possession, as the regular season
right,
is ongoing, I think winning will then take care of itself. At some point, those habits that you've formed,
yeah,
the habits that you've instilled in your team in terms of getting better on both ends. Now you look at it, okay, and say, okay, we're going into the second season, which a lot of times you talk about the conference tournament as another season from the regular season. And
mm-hmm,
then when you get into March Madness or the NCAA tournament, that's a whole nother season. And I think one of the things that you have to be mindful of, and if you look at Coach TJ, I mean, you
mm-hmm,
know, um, you're not coaching every possession to the point where kids are going to make mistakes. They are.
right,
It's not from lack of effort.
yeah,
um, you just want to remind them, hey, listen, we want to give it our all each possession. We want to execute, so your job is to execute your part of the play, whatever that may be.
mm-hmm,
That's your job to do. At the same time, defensively, it's all about effort, right? Who's going
right,
to get out and pressure the basketball? Great defense starts with pressure on the ball. You want to pressure the ball, and then you've got to be in position with great team defensive principles. One pass away positioning, two pass away. You've got rotations and to help the helper, and
right,
eventually your goal is to contest every shot. High hand, top foot, high hand, finish possessions by boxing out and rebounding. And that mindset of what you're trying to do really doesn't change from the regular season into the tournament. But
right,
again, I think being loose, being a little bit less, you can't be tightly wound, in the
right,
NCAA tournament, because your team oftentimes is going to look to you. If you're that tight, they're going to get tight. So I do think
right,
there is a little bit of understanding that, again, same type of things you've done all season. We've been here, we've done that. But at the same time, you also want to be mindful of the guys not becoming, too tight in terms of their effort, where they feel like if they miss a shot or if they make a mistake, it could be the end of their season. You can't think like that.
right. No, and like one thing that we did our show earlier for the Tennessee game, and one of the main things that we were talking about is the whole Joshua Jefferson injury, and basically how the
Oh,
team has
yeah,
come together and just played an excellent game on Sunday against Kentucky. In the second half,
yeah,
they looked like a whole different team.
yeah, no question. He's listen, I mean, the way Iowa State, I mean, Jefferson's he in this game, as you probably just said, or you guys probably alluded to, Tennessee is an excellent rebounding basketball team.
Yes,
And, you got Jefferson is, correct me if I'm wrong, he's your leading rebounder.
he
And
is. Yeah,
so, to have him in this game, I think is very, very important, just because of the way Tennessee attacks the glass. You're going to have to rebound the ball in this game. I do think you guys have an advantage from the three point line. I think you guys have some excellent 3 point shooters. You have skill, you have versatility, but you're going to
Yeah.
have to gang rebound in this game. You're going to have to hit guys first, hit them first when that ball goes up. And Tennessee's not going to accept blockouts. So you're going to have to hold your box outs and then really go after the basketball. To your point, that going after that ball in pursuit and that relentlessness is going to be very important. There's going to be a lot of loose ball scrums in this game,
Yeah.
guys diving for balls. That's the type of effort that you're going to have to beat Tennessee, especially the way they go after the offensive glass.
Definitely. And before, and we'll just have a few more topics I want to go over. I just wanted to talk about the Sweet 16 matchups going on Thursday and Friday because there are going to be eight spectacular games. Um, First, I wanted to dive into Duke and St. John's because Rick Pitino basically is back. He's revived himself after Louisville and Duke, who had to survive against Siena and then was able to pull away from from TCU. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think again you've got to be mindful of the injury to Caleb Foster as it relates to Duke.
Right.
I think Nagumba is going to be back in the front court, but the concern, at least with what we talked about early going into that bracket, and talking to a lot of different media outlets, was Duke's ability to handle pressure. Not
Yeah.
having another primary ball handler. Look, you know, it's going to be something that they're going to be challenged in this game, especially St. John's, right?
Oh yeah.
St. John's ability to pressure, especially even on in the inbound, possessions, if St. John's can score, because let's not take away Duke's defense; it's really good as well.
Oh yeah.
But when they score, is Duke going to be able to take the ball out, get it in bounds, and then be able to handle that pressure? Because if you're St. John's and you're going into this game, I think you're probably looking at losing another primary ball handler in Foster. Not having him
Hmm.
is something that I think is going to be a storyline in this game. The pressure that St. John's can apply on Duke, disrupt their rhythm, and really make it hard for them. Now, they do have, obviously, Cameron Boozer, who is a pressure release in himself, that he can actually catch the ball and take it up the floor to initiate offense. That's a huge weapon and an asset in this tournament. But for me personally, look, I think St. John's, again, they have what you sometimes call a recruit, that it factor. I
Yeah.
just think St. John's has that it right now going, and I wouldn't be surprised to see an upset here with St. John's beating Duke in this game.
Yeah, I actually have that in my bracket. I have them facing off against Michigan State. And with that, we can just talk about Michigan State and UConn. Dan Hurley versus Izzo. Izzo, this is usually the time of month where he usually makes a run.
Again, I think you look at this Michigan State UConn. It's another very very good matchup. Um, look, UConn played really well, and they've been playing very well as of late. And I think for them, it's all going to come down to making shots. I think. Listen, Reed is tremendous in the interior, but Michigan State can throw some bodies at him. I
Oh
think what
yeah.
happened last game against UCLA is you saw UCLA doubling down there, and he was just kicking it out, and they were making threes. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a different story in this game. I don't think Michigan State. I think they're going to try to guard him straight up in the post, or maybe mix in some double teams at times, but kind of not. Don't give him a steady diet of doubling him every time. But I do like Michigan State for some reason. I listen. I love UConn. I love Coach Hurley. I'm rooting. There's a lot of really good coaches, and you can learn so much by watching these teams and these coaches. But for some reason, Michigan State right now is another team that I feel like has what that it factor is, and they could easily upset UConn. And again, I have to stay with the bracket I chose, and I chose St. John's and I chose Michigan State in this, to get to the Elite Eight out of there.
Yeah, no, I that matchup would be electric. Now we're gonna move to the West real quick and look at these two matchups. Arizona and Arkansas, like Darius Acuff against this beast of an Arizona team. I mean, Iowa State had to play them in the Big 12 semifinals and played them to a buzzer beater.
Yeah, I think Arizona is probably one of the most complete teams there is in all of college basketball. As good as Acuff and Richmond and their team is, I just feel like Arizona right now is playing with a team that just again at every position they've got a great combination of youth with experience with some international skill flavor. I just love their team. They're better defensively than people give them credit for. They can beat you in so many different ways. This is again another great matchup. I'm just kind of slightly leaning towards Arizona in that game.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be like Acuff and everybody else, but like I think Arizona pulls. I think this is gonna be the year that Arizona makes their run. And I mean the second matchup, or at least the first matchup of this, but Texas and Purdue. Texas has just made a run from the first four to the Sweet 16, and had some impressive wins, beating uh, aged advantage led BYU team, and then beating Gonzaga in Portland, which was basically a home game for Gonzaga.
Yeah, no, I think. Listen, I think this Texas team is, playing their best basketball right now. And I think that sometimes happens in the tournament, right? You get a
Yeah,
team that's very, very talented. They're very well put together. They've got a tremendous roster, that they've assembled. Swain came, from Xavier to Texas. He was with Coach Miller there. Came over.
mhm,
They're playing excellent basketball right now. Um, I think this Purdue team, though, as it relates to having at least some semblance of guys who have been around the program for a little bit, their continuity, their camaraderie, obviously, Coach Painter, the job he does is incredible. I think Purdue right now, is a team that I do think, slightly again could advance, but Texas is very, very well. They're a team that's positioned in they're good enough to beat anybody right now.
mhm.
But I'm gonna lean towards Purdue in that one.
Yeah, I think the guard play will be the difference in that one, especially with Braden Smith leading Purdue. Um, Now, this one obviously is sort of near and dear. This matchup near and dear to my heart in the South region. Obviously, the the biggest rival of Iowa, or Iowa State, the Iowa Hawkeyes, pulled off an amazing win over the number one seed Florida Gators, and Nebraska with an electric win over Vanderbilt. Um, Iowa and Nebraska, like this one is going to be an interesting one. What do you think?
I think you said it best. I mean, look, I mean that the Iowa team, the way they play, that deliberate style offensively, again, when they matched up with Florida, and you feel for Florida because they were really good as well, and just
Yeah.
got caught at the end there. But the way Iowa plays, I mean, they'll take you late into the shot clock, and they'll
Hmm.
score with 20. After 28 seconds of making you defend, or 29 seconds, and all of a sudden they're making a three and it's contested. And then you come down the other end of the floor and your team shoots it quick. You miss it. Now you got to come back down and guard Iowa again. And sometimes for another, 30 seconds. And then they make another shot. That formula can really deflate teams. Um, this matchup to me is even flip a coin. Both teams, great stories. You got to tip your hat to Coach Hoiberg and the
Yeah.
Nebraska team and what they've been able to accomplish. And look, I mean, they're a very, very good basketball team. They're fun to watch on both ends. They've got weapons. Sanford was at Iowa. Now he's at Nebraska.
Hmm.
He's their leading scorer. A little bit of a storyline within the game there. But gee, I tell you what, that's a coin flip. And if you're not going to get as many Cinderellas anymore, I don't think, at least the way
Yeah.
it is today, unless there's upsets above the bracket and then that upset below and they meet. I don't know if you're going to get to those second weekends, but I do think Nebraska, the story of them makes them makes them kind of a feel good Cinderella type story. Not that they're Cinderella, but my point is they're just a team you can't help but root for.
Right, right. No, it's been a great story for Nebraska, especially with the mayor being in Lincoln right now. And then this one, man, this one is going to be a dandy at tomorrow night. I said what the number two offense in Ken Palm against the number four defense. Like anytime it's the best offense versus the best defense, this game always ends up being an amazing game with Illinois and Houston.
Again, I think you've got two teams that are, a little bit contrasting. Illinois obviously well funded, very very well funded team put together, international, kids that are, exceptionally skilled and talented. Um, they've got obviously some, the youth there and they've got some other kids that are really good. But I do think Houston's team, for me, anyways, I just love their team. I think they've got a guy on their team that I believe to be one of the most underrated guys, maybe as it relates to the NBA. Look, if I was
Hmm.
an NBA, scout today, there's a lot of players in this Sweet 16 who are going to play in the NBA, and I'm sure, but Houston has a few kids, and I really like the kid Tugler for Houston. I think he just
Mm.
helps you win. It might not necessarily be in the stat line all the time, but he plays without the basketball. He gives max effort on every possession. He changes shots. He rebounds. He's going to be versatile enough to go out and guard these tremendously skilled bigs that Illinois has. But this is going to be a great matchup. I just had picked Houston early on in the bracket, and I'm going to stay with them. But
Yeah.
that's going to be a great game as well.
Definitely will. And then as we finished off, we're gonna go another game with contrasting styles. Michigan playing Alabama with the first game in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got to love the way Alabama plays. I mean,
Yeah.
their tempo, great spacing, very similar to that of like an NBA team in terms of their how they push the ball. They really utilize the 3 point line, and they have a lot of different guys that can make threes. But they're a really high powered, explosive team that if they get hot, they could beat anybody.
Right.
Michigan is, again, when you talk about complete teams, Arizona comes to mind. I think Michigan is that other team. I think Houston and I think Iowa State. Those were my four picks coming into the tournament to get to the Final Four.
Hmm.
But Michigan, again, they've got experience, they've got skill. They're going to have to be, on their. They're going to have to giddy up on defense. They're going to have to get back in transition, and really, match up and find the ball, and then really find dangerous shooters and be in positions where they can help one another and really get out and contest a 3 point ball shot in this game. But again, two evenly matched teams in a lot of different ways, but Michigan to me might have the advantage there.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And then obviously to end off, I tried to get tickets to this game. It's insane. The prices were insane, but we have Tennessee and Iowa State ending the game. To be the last Sweet 16 game of the year, I guess.
Well, I think you said it. I feel bad, Talia, you're not going after everything you're doing to for the Cyclones. I would have hoped that you would be there, especially in Chicago at your home base, man. Right? You know,
Yeah, I'll be. I mean, look, I'll be at the alumni bar. I'll at least be do that.
I mean, hopefully you get, you can get some, you'll get a good game and you can watch it and maybe get to the Final Four if they can advance. But Iowa State's got a really good team, and that's going to be a great game as well. Yeah, I hope Jefferson is back.
I hope so as well. If not, hopefully, if we win on Saturday or not Saturday, Friday, and he's not playing, we can get to Sunday and he's there. All right, Coach. To end the show, I wanted to talk about your entrepreneurship ventures. Um, like from what principles have you taken from your coaching career to your your companies that you've created or are working on in your entrepreneurship?
Well, that's a great question. I tell you what, I think just the leadership side of, leading, a group of this. Give you an example. We had a
Yeah,
lot of paid interns from Boston College,
yeah,
Northeastern, South Florida, different colleges, and meeting with them and really, again, leading them, motivating them,
yeah.
obviously assigning them certain things, and then at the same time, being in position where I don't know if you can hear me, being in position where you can you hear me? I'm
Yeah, I can
sorry, I
hear you. I
lost you
can
there.
hear you.
Being, yeah, being in a position where you can kind of lead by example. But I do think, the side of being a leader, whether you're coaching, whether you're doing it in in an entrepreneurial type setting, they're
Yeah,
very, very similar. Accountability, making sure that, you have an organized, lesson plan, or you're what you're trying to get accomplished, and you break it down for your team day by day. You're trying to get better. You're not trying to get to everything in one day, and you try to get better with your with your business every day as well. And so it's been a really good experience for me. We started this years ago, and
okay.
it's something that it kind of came together for us. And so yeah, I'm enjoying that. And I consider myself doing the coaching side of it, just doing it in a little bit different way.
Good, good, good. And yeah, and no, I think just like in entrepreneurship or just in leadership in general, I think um what's key is like also like being serving others and serving the people so that like that to show that you're in the trenches with them, but also like leading them like with like and also leading by example. So then that way it builds like a trust to be like, okay, you know what, he does know what he's doing, so now I can trust that he will lead me in the right direction.
It was funny. I mean, we used to have a rule when I was coaching, anyways, my teams. I would have a rule that would basically say, look, when I'm sitting down in practice, you can sit down, meaning
Right.
that, we're all in this together. We're working together, and no one's, above, the standard. The standard is the standard. The principles are the principles. The culture is the culture. You want to have great teammates and teamwork and camaraderie amongst the team as a coach with your basketball team, as well as with your group that you're working with on your project from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So they're very, very similar in that sense. So yeah, no, I think you said it best. I mean, servanthood is a huge quality too as well.
All right, well, Coach, thank you for giving me all your time today. Where can everybody find you?
Well, for me right now, I'm on any of the social media platforms. I think, at coach_Spinelli, is where I'm at. And, you can get me there. And, hopefully, if somebody's looking to get me on Twitter, they can find, how this Google stuff is. But listen, I am very, very appreciative of your time, Tracy, Tyler, excuse me. And I'm hoping that you get a chance to see your Cyclones. And, I'm really rooting for you. You got something good going. I thought this was an excellent presentation by you. So congratulations, and keep going and doing what you're doing.
I appreciate you, Coach. Hopefully we can have you on in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay, Tyler, good luck. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, buddy.
All right, thank you, man.
See you, man.
See ya. All right. Now, you guys, thank you guys for joining that interview. That was an excellent interview by Coach Scott Spinelli. Um, look forward to or look for I look forward to having more interviews like that in the future. Um, this is a bonus episode that I definitely wanted to have just a coach's view from standpoint of how their minds work during um a Final Four, or not a Final Four, a March Madness run. So with that, we are going to end tonight's show. As always, we are thankful for our presenting sponsor, FanDuel. Don't forget to put in your bets. And if you know ball, go and make money with FanDuel. Also, if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me on Twitter at SideTieGuy. Like I said, if you see me this weekend, come say hi. I'm in Chicago. I'll be in Chicago this weekend. Um, Also, follow us on social media. Follow what we're doing on the Bleav in I Would Say podcast. I just chopped up some videos on YouTube and YouTube Shorts and YouTube. So go check that out. Check out the YouTube page. I will be posting on Twitter and Instagram later. So make sure you go check that out. Um, yeah, so that is the conclusion of this show for Tyler Carter and from the Bleav in Iowa State podcast. Roll clones, baby.